Hey, welcome to Simple Faith. So glad to have you with us as we continue our marriage series, Making Marriage Simple. Today, we get a chance to hear from the power couple, Michael Jr. and his wife, Ebony. You might know Michael Jr. from his comedy. He's been on many late night shows, many comedy specials. He's all over YouTube. You got to check him out. He's fantastic. Great follower of Jesus, and he and his wife have a marriage workshop that they share called Funny How Marriage Works. And we had him at our church recently, and he was just incredible. And he and his wife have been kind enough to sit down with us and talk about communication styles and fighting styles when it comes to how you relate with your spouse. I know today is really going to bless you. Hey, and if you haven't subscribed to this podcast, Simple Faith, I want to encourage you to do so because you'll be able to get every one of the marriage series podcasts, but also all of our other series as well. We got some great stuff coming up. We've got some prayer podcasts coming up as we lead into Easter. We've got a series on apologetics around Easter, some other great stuff coming up as well. So I want to make sure that you've got that. So out of all the thousands and thousands of people that listen to the podcast, only about 15% of you have actually subscribed. So go ahead and hit subscribe now, because if you do that, guess what? We get better guests. And there's not going to be much better than Michael Jr. and Ebony. But they've been so gracious as to spend time with us, and I want to make sure that you're able to hear them and everybody else. So click subscribe. Thank you to our sponsors being a part of this show. And here's my conversation with the always funny, entertaining, and insightful Michael Jr. and his wife, Ebony. Michael Jr. and Ebony, thank you so much for joining us. For our audience that may not know who you are, which can't be very many out there, tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got into what you're doing today.
Okay, I am Michael Jr. This is my wife, Ebony.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we get to help make marriages amazing. That's what we get to do. And how do we do that? Well, one of the things we do for people, for married couples, is we help them foundationally write a marriage mission statement. One of the very first things we do, and I'll use ourselves as an example. Some people think, well, I think it's very important because when you're on mission, it does things like it protects you. You'll probably remember, what's his name from the Bible?
The Apostle Paul.
Paul was on his way to Rome. He had a mission. He got bit by a snake. Everybody thought he was going to die, but he didn't. He just shook it off and moved on because he was on mission. Your mission actually protects you. So if your mission protects you, along with all these other benefits, it would help marriages if they understood their mission, because a lot of snakes will come up against some marriages.
A lot of distractions.
So even if your mission seems different at first, God absolutely brought you guys together for a purpose, because my background is in comedy initially, but then...
And then I've been helping single women prepare for marriage even before they start dating someone seriously. And so about 3 years ago, God had us blend these two things together. Now we have Funny How Marriage Works.
Funny How Marriage Works. We get to use comedy to help marriages. And anybody listening who's married can have the same thing. Like, God has a plan, but you want to get in line with his plan so you can really be on mission.
Yeah.
That's what we're all about.
How long do you think it took you to realize your purpose? Because, Michael, I've heard your story a little bit of, it started with comedy, but obviously it wasn't just that. You began to see how to use comedy, and obviously, much like telling a joke, it's constantly whittling it down to what the bare essentials are. Do you feel like both of you have been on that journey? Has it been at the same pace? Did you discover this idea of working together on marriages relatively at the same time? When did you discover this, and how long did it take?
Well,
Just showed up at our house. Right?
Yeah, well, for me, me understanding that God created me to help people prepare for marriage, that came after we first got married. I was working in what I thought was my dream job, and then God called me home. And I didn't really like that very much. And so as a stay-at-home mom, I thought, okay, well, this must be it. I'm just gonna love this thing, this role here, and I didn't. And so one day I got kind of fed up, and I told the family, I said, hey, I'm gonna go upstairs and sit on the couch and talk to the Lord until He tells me what I'm supposed to be doing. And that's exactly how this whole thing came about. Like He just started bringing things to my remembrance.
She said she wasn't going to get off the couch until she got clarity.
Yeah, I was going to stay on that couch. It was a few days. But He started speaking to me about the things that He had brought me through and how He had prepared me for some things, and then kind of start highlighting some things that caught my interest and things that I've always been kind of passionate about. And that kind of started my journey for me.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, it started with me wanting to get acceptance from people, which is why you would do jokes with your friends and do all of this stuff. But then once I met Jesus, my desire to be accepted by other people went down significantly. So it was like I can put my head on a swivel and be more curious about what people might need, because I wasn't just trying to fill my needs of being noticed or accepted. So for me, it took place outside of a comedy club in Los Angeles, where I had a shift take place, and I felt like instead of trying to get laughs from people, I was supposed to give them an opportunity to laugh, which has now evolved into just asking the question, what can I give to my audience, as opposed to the default question, which was, how can I get laughs from them? So that attitude of giving or looking for an opportunity to give out of obedience, coupled with her understanding, has really brought something really cool together.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting. So you decide to work together.
You just going to say that, though? You just going to say it was really interesting? You're just going to announce it like that. It's supposed to just be a thought. And you're like, wow, okay.
So I should have had a little bit more inflection. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe more inflection.
Man, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Goodness. Okay.
Choose that take. Yeah.
Well, I love the shift idea. I guess I'm still chewing on that. The idea of, instead of getting a laugh from you, I want to give you an opportunity to laugh. I think that's fascinating. And I would imagine in the comedy world, there's a lot of insecurity out there, because it's a pass-fail experience every time you get on stage. So there's a lot of, how do I win at this, rather than how do I give in this? This is which sets you up well for the marriage conversation, because marriage is all about giving. Is that right?
No, not for me. It's all about getting.
I think this is the moment I realize this won't be a typical interview.
Yeah.
I think that shift of what can I give as opposed to what can I get, I think it just works across the board. Because even when I got on stage, after making that decision, after having that shift, the very next time I got on stage, I actually didn't. Normally, I would, back then, I would pride myself in bringing laughter to the audience within at least the first 7 seconds of being on stage. I'd actually gotten to the point where I could have them laughing within 2 seconds of being on stage and not doing anything physical. So I would be I was honing that gift in. And then as soon as that shift took place to giving people an opportunity to laugh, I remember getting up on stage, and I didn't even do a joke or attempt to make the people laugh for probably 25 seconds. And I didn't even speak for a good 4 seconds when I was up on stage. Like, I was okay in that, because I realized when you have a gift, your job is to present the gift. It's not really about how people respond to the gift. And if you had a gift for someone, you wouldn't just knock on their door and shove it in their face. You'd wait to get invited inside. And when the time is right, you would present the gift. So all of that changed as a result of me saying, what can I give, as opposed to what can I get? Mm-hmm. If I'm trying to get something, I want to do the joke right away. I want to jump right in so I can hurry up and get to you accepting me via your laughter. But all of that changed in a big way quite some time ago. And it carries on with marriage and all the other stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let me interrupt this podcast for just a brief moment and tell you about our brand new book we have out called 40 Days to Easter. Starting March the 11th, we begin our 40-day journey to Easter. And spoiler alert, there's actually 42 days in there. So starting on March 10th, you can begin your journey to Easter and end on Easter Sunday itself with very short daily devotions going through the Gospel of Mark. You can pick up this book called 40 Days to Easter by Rusty George on Amazon today. Thanks so much. Back to the episode. So you take that mentality into Funny How Marriage Works. What can we give to them, give them an opportunity in their marriages to succeed? I first saw this probably a year and a half ago, and I was blown away by, Michael, we all know that you're funny, but Ebony, you're a great communicator as well, in a little bit of a different way. You guys play off each other really well, but just your content was really good too. And I was really fascinated by your approach with this phrase when you said, the trick is to never compromise. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and where that came from and how this different style of marriage understanding came about?
Yeah. We kind of stumbled upon this.
Yeah, we wouldn't say, we don't say never compromise.
Yes.
Okay. We would say, go ahead.
Compromise is a very temporary solution.
Okay.
And so the way we kind of stumbled into this is that I realized over the course of our marriage, there are certain things, everybody has these when they get married. You realize, there's some really different things about my spouse than me. Like they think different, they do things different, their processes are different, they perform different, and they're not always desirable. And so in order to bridge the gap, sometimes we make these compromises. Like, he's been very good at organizing things, and I'm very organized. And I like to put things back where I got them from. Well, I tried organizing things for him. I tried labeling. I tried suggesting, hey, can you put that back? All these things, but he's not built that way. And so in order to make myself happy, I thought, I'll just do it for him. Like when he doesn't put it where it's supposed to go, I'll just fix it for him. Well, every time I did that, I start noticing like just a teensy bit of resentment. Like not a lot. So I'm avoiding the conflict. I'm not nagging him. The thing gets put back where it belongs. So the result's there. Just, ever so slight.
When she says slight, I'll explain to you.
Resentment.
So it's not like most people would get, meaning my wife has this ability to, even long before I had it or was aware of it, she has this ability to think about what she's thinking about. So she constantly surveys what she's thinking and why she's thinking.
Wow.
So at that level, she was able to notice a little small piece of resentment, resistance, and even regret. But it's the same dosage that everyone has, we found, who compromised. They just weren't aware of it. So my wife, when she saw it, we were kind of blown back by this thing.
Yeah, because after, one time, it's just nothing. But a few times a day, every week, every month, year after year, like those little tiny things, they start to pile up. And so after some years, I started thinking, like, this can't be right. Like, I'm losing joy now.
Yeah.
I'm not just avoiding a conflict. Like, joy is leaking.
Now, just to bring everybody in on this to understand it, where would you say on a scale of 1 to 10? I just want everybody to understand the level of intent and awareness that my wife operates in. Where would you say our marriage was at that time as far as getting along in relationship?
Oh, at that time, I would say like 8.5, 9.
Yeah, so the marriage was really good still, even then. But she was noticing these things, and this is what spiked our curiosity to a whole nother level. Mm-hmm. So the marriage is strong and great, but we know there's another level, and we want to get to that other level.
Yeah, and so in my curiosity, I asked God a different question. Like, not can you change him, but
right.
How is it possible that when my husband puts the pepper in the wrong place in the kitchen, that like jacks up my morning? Like, how is it possible?
Yeah, so we just started getting more curious as a whole across the board. Mm-hmm. And then, fast forward, couples would, even after we moved to the Dallas area, and God clearly called us to marriages, couples start coming to our house and they would have some marriage issues. Because as soon as you say yes to God about something, like opportunity is going to be right there. So couples would come over, have some issues, and we'd just be talking a little bit, and then we'd look and see what they were doing. And first it was some basic stuff that they just didn't get, like some basic communication stuff. And people often say that communication is their problem in marriage. I'll actually let you know, communication is never a problem. It's just not the problem at all. But it's easy to say, because then you're not really pointing the finger at anybody.
It's the thing you notice most.
Yeah, it's the thing. But if your roof was leaking, it would be similar to saying when your roof is leaking, and the problem is my drywall won't hold the water. That don't have anything to do with it. It's just a reaction within that. Like it's communication is not the issue. If communication was actually an issue, you wouldn't have got married because you can't communicate. Like you would have showed up at the wrong altar. Like it would have been some real problems up in there, but you didn't. But you worked that part out. So there's something extra going on. And if you stop at saying communication is the problem, how in the world do you fix that? Because you have to talk about it. You got to communicate to get through it. So how could you possibly get through it? It's like saying my problem is both of my feet don't work. Be like, oh, well, just walk over here. Well, but my feet don't work. How am I going to walk over there? It's okay, just walk over here. Like it's a catch-22. You can't really do the thing that way. So that's kind of where we are now. We love helping. So it started out with just some couples coming to our crib. Then they would tell people. People call them, hey, can we come over? And other people show up. Like, how'd you get past the gate? I don't know how you people got here, right? So then we started adding a little bit to my events, and then we did a marriage only event in the Dallas area, and that thing packed out immediately. It wasn't really comedy oriented. And then it just started growing, and then God would show us more of the issues that people were having or the issues that they thought they were having. And we would just say some simple things, and people would be like, yo, I never thought of that. And the results we've been getting from people have been outstanding, like in a big way. So now we're ready to just go ahead and make this available to really more people. In fact, we're doing a conference, but it's not like a conference you might think. It's a different conference. You can go to it. All you have to do is have internet access. Yes. And it's called the 90-Minute Marriage Conference. Yeah.
.com.
How long does it last?
What's that?
How long does it last?
We haven't decided yet. We'll probably go in 90 minutes. Yeah. So it's a 90-minute marriage conference, and people might be thinking, how much can I learn in 90 minutes? Well, I don't know. If you're thinking that, then you need to go talk to somebody else. But we're going to help people understand what's really going on with communication and better understand conflict too. We're going to do it in 90 minutes. Okay. So some people watched this content and they were like, yo, this is beast.
All right. So I'm going to ask you to do it in 90 seconds. What are the typical issues behind communication?
Okay. So the typical issue behind, people are looking for the answers externally as opposed to internally. Boom. There it is.
It's less than 90 seconds.
Yeah. You've got 84 seconds.
Most people will say by default, if my husband would or if my wife would. And I'm not talking about the hokey stuff where you say, you have to start with yourself. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. We're not talking about that stuff. No. Like we're talking about legit for real. There's actually a way to get internally curious. As if you don't get internally curious, you will get externally furious. Or another way to say it, if you don't go within, you will go without. And we kind of help people break down what that looks like specifically. But in the conference specifically, we cover things like how to add vulnerability to your marriage, how to make it a safe place, which is something that my wife covers, which is very important. Fellas, if you're listening right now, vulnerability is great in marriage. Comes with bonuses. Just letting you know right now, if you can be vulnerable, man, you're on point. What else do we show them?
We teach them how to properly view their spouse while they're in the midst of a conflict.
Yeah, how are you actually seeing them? There's 3 ways that you're seeing your spouse in the midst of a conflict. So we actually name those 3, and we do it in such a way where people can remember them. Now, if you think about it, God is really awesome because in the midst of even talking about conflict with the couples that we work with or coach or whatever the case is, we're laughing. Like jokes are being made in the midst of talking about conflict. So that alone, just the simple fact that we're laughing in the middle of talking about conflict actually breaks the pattern, because normally when people think about their conflicts, they go through the same pattern and they get more and more upset. Where we're taking that same pattern, talking about the conflict, and suddenly we're laughing. And now we're talking about the conflict and then we're laughing again. So it's all strategic. Everything plays, because if you can add laughter as an ingredient, the meal starts to taste different. You can handle it a little better. You're more open to it, and you become more curious about it. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing.
It's that tension relief thing that you talk about.
Yes, it's very, very important, because there's already tension there because you have conflict. So let's utilize the tension, because tension is comedy's best friend, and we can help people get to a better place. And then there's another thing we teach people, which is to identify if they have a transactional relationship or not. But what's your question?
Can you tell us those three things?
Yeah, we just did.
the three names.
Oh, the three ways you look at your spouse. Yeah, you just go to the 90minutemarriageconference.com and we're going to break that down for you. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. There's three ways. There's one of the ways you're looking at me right now in one of those three ways. I'll give you the three, but then there's some stuff afterwards, right? So one of the ways you look at your spouse at any given moment is you look at them as an obstacle. They're in the way. They're not doing what you need them to do.
There's something you need, but as soon as you get them out the way, you can get to it.
Yeah. The other way is you look at them as a tool. Mm-hmm. There's something that you need them to do in order to get what you want, and you're not even seeing them the way they need to be seen. And then the last way that you look at your spouse, which is probably the preferred way, you look at them as a person.
Yes, a person with feelings, a day that they've had the same kind of day you've had, with thoughts, ambitions, desires, like all the things. Like they're a whole person in there.
So we help people become aware in the heat of a moment, or even in the cool of a moment, how they're seeing their spouse at any given moment. And we actually help give them a trigger so they can ask that question or be aware of it in the moment. And it's amazing what takes place soon as that question comes up for the person. Like immediately, it's as if you can read the label on the jar because you're no longer in the jar. Mm-hmm. So we're all about helping people become aware as soon as they can, so they can really make the right decision about the person God has put them with.
That gets back to this whole gift, Ebony, that you have of thinking about what you're thinking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
crazy beneficial.
Right.
When you're thinking about what you're thinking about, you actually have to give yourself also the opportunity to hear from the Holy Spirit. Because now you're not in your emotions. You're outside of yourself, seeing what's happening. And I can see what I'm thinking. And it's also space for God to say, let me breathe a real truth into this. Mm-hmm. Let me breathe a different insight into this. And so it just sometimes will immediately fizzle conflict before it even starts.
Yeah, conflict will just calm down, and now you can really see a way forward. Mm-hmm. In fact, when we tell couples, we explain to a couple, so if you're out there and you're watching and you're a couple, I don't know how you're a couple, but if you're a part of a couple, as one person, if you have a lot of conflict in your marriage, I'm excited for you, because conflict, the way we see it and the stuff that we teach people, conflict can be seen as confirmation that you guys are right for each other. You just have to know what to do with it.
I would agree. Yeah, it's not the couples who are fighting a lot who are close to divorce. It's ones that have just given up.
Yeah. We had there was one lady we worked with. She actually seemed happily married, but then she said to us, we don't have conflict.
Yeah, we never argue.
Yeah, we never argue. I was like, oh.
It's always a bad sign for me.
Meaning not the argument part, but the fact that she thinks she doesn't have a conflict.
Right.
So then we showed her, we actually have a whole flow chart that we show people so they can actually track and see what their conflict looks like. Mm-hmm. But they do it in a non-hostile way. So the husband can insert his conflict, she inserts hers. You can see on the map where the conflict goes, and then you can see how you keep going into the same, what we would call a cul-de-sac circle. Because there's no outlet. You keep having the same conflict over and over again. So once people see that, it's like an aha moment, like, my goodness, there it is right there. Yeah. I always wondered why we keep having the same argument over and over again.
Right.
And for people so they don't argue, they can see how there's no way that we can agree on everything before it even starts. Like we're two completely separate people. So in order for that to actually happen, one of the people in the group has to completely resign or jump to a conclusion before the thing shows up so they can just bypass the whole conflict altogether.
Yeah, so they're still going through the exact same path. They're just doing it internally.
Wow.
So what I'll say to the listeners, because I'm sure you got at least 3 or 4 of them. What I'll say to your listeners is, that's
my mother
is what do you think happens if you have a conflict or you're upset about something? You just, instead of having a conversation, what do you think happens if you just keep it inside over and over and over again? Like there's nothing good about that staying inside of you, but it seems like it might be good because now you're not arguing. There's not a fight. But you don't have to have a fight to actually get free of that thing. Most people think, well, I shouldn't say even, but in James 4:1, it says, what causes the fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires that battle within? There's something inside of you that needs to get out of you, and God wants it out of you. And maybe the conflict or the incongruency in your marriage is the sign that the thing is there so it can be removed. Maybe God set us up in that way so we could be free as a result of being married.
Ebony, let's go back to the pepper shaker is in the wrong place in the kitchen. Obviously, at this moment, Michael is an object in the way of your happiness.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I tried to use him as a tool first, but that didn't work.
Yeah, you tried to tell him how to put. Yeah. Now you come out and the kitchen's in disarray and it's his fault. Okay. So how did you deal with that in a way that didn't cause you just to repress stuff or compromise, but you actually dealt with it in a healthy way?
So let me tell you this another story that happened early in the marriage.
Okay.
And we were getting ready to go out of town for Thanksgiving, and I had to leave the house and run an errand. When I came back, Michael had just finished cooking breakfast for the kids, and he was supposed to clean up so that we can just gather our things and leave. But when I got in, there was still like crumbs on the counter, and butter was still sitting out on the knife, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, "Hey, I thought you were going to clean up." And then he said, "I did." I was like,
which I did, though. I just want to be clear. Actually, I did.
What do you mean? Like, so the stuff's sitting out here still. Like, and so it started this back and forth. And then I began to feel insulted because I'm thinking, I know there's nothing wrong with his eyes. Like, he can see. So is he trying to make me believe that this stuff just showed up by itself? Like, I don't understand what's happening. So while he's trying to explain to himself to me so that I understand, like the heat is rising up, and I'm only being quiet because I want him to finish his sentence, because then I'm gonna let him have it.
Yeah.
And while I'm waiting, and it's rising,
she's thinking about what she's thinking about at the same time, though.
I heard God say, "He's not lying," and it like the heat went straight down. And I was thinking, how is that possible? And it's like, those moments when God shows you something, it's a bunch of stuff we can show you like this in a moment. And it was in that moment that I got the revelation of why we're different. And that I am very detailed. I'm a detailed person. I think systematically, in a very systematic order. Michael is more globally minded, like he's a visionary. And so while I'm thinking, how on earth did you not see these crumbs? Visionaries don't see crumbs on the counter. And God showed me that. Like, he showed me the benefit to having somebody like that in my life. Because if we're both concerned about crumbs, we actually don't go anywhere.
Yeah, that would be crummy. Just made that up just now.
Cleaning up crumbs takes a long time. We both worry about the details. We all lost in the weeds. So one of us needs to be over the situation and not be so detail oriented so that things can be relatively in order, but that we're still moving forward. And just like that, God showed me that. And when he got done talking, I didn't have anything to say. I was like,
I was like, yeah, sure.
That's right. So what I hear you saying is, Michael, in your defense, you were allowed to speak as long as possible, which gave God time to talk to her.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what we should all do.
Quick to listen, slow to speak.
Yeah, I don't recommend you just talk a lot. I don't recommend you just talk a lot. Hopefully your spouse is listening to the Lord. I'm just gonna keep talking while you listen to the Lord. That's not what we're saying. So if you're a couple out there, and chances are, it was funny because I mentioned this on stage one time at one of the events, and I said, chances are one of you, let's say both a husband and a wife are in the car. Chances are one of you probably, when, let's say it starts to rain, one of you don't really turn the wipers on as fast as the other one would. Like it's just okay rolling with the drops. Like which one are you, George? Is that you?
That's me.
Yeah. So you leave your wife is like, yo, turn the wipers on. What are you doing?
That's exactly right.
Right. So here's what that is, man. Here's what I feel like God showed me in that moment is the reason I don't need the wipers on immediately. My wife was like, you gonna turn the wipers on at some point? She's not tripping, but the reason is because I'm not looking at the dots. I'm looking at the bigger vision. I could see everything because it's way ahead, where she is more detailed, looking at the windshield and noticing small things.
Rusty, I can't see past the dots. Like I'm like,
yep.
How can you see anything? Like,
right.
I don't see the dots. Now, how awesome is God that he would set us up that way where we're going to get where we need to go regardless because of what we're both looking at. Even though it's the same windshield, we're seeing different things. Mm-hmm. God is amazing in the way he equipped us to do so.
All right, let me shift gears a little bit to parenting because you're learning this while raising 5 kids. Is that right?
We're not raising 5 kids.
We got one left to raise.
We got 6 grandkids.
Well, I'm speaking more of you were learning this during raising, yes. Or I think the technical term is rearing kids. How did this work with them? Did you teach them this along the way? How did you manage conflict even in their presence or with them? Tell me what you've learned along the way when it comes to parenting in regards to conflict.
So one of the things we'll teach, I was at a parenting conference recently. I wasn't even speaking there. I was just there. And there was a couple who was having an issue. The wife was having an issue with their teenage daughter, and the husband got along with her great. And then the husband was having an issue with their 4-year-old. And the wife loved before they just got along great. And they kept talking about the issues. And I noticed the pattern. And here's what I told them. I said to the wife, because it was kind of an open where we could talk to anybody. I asked the wife this question. I said, when you were 14 years old, and I said it in a way where she didn't see the connection immediately on purpose because I wanted her to just give a pure answer. I said, when you were I said, how was life when you were 14 years old? Were you, and sarcastically, not sarcastically, but I wanted her to go in a certain direction. I said, did you have a lot of friends when you were 14? And I could see her face kind of frown up a little bit because 14 was not a good age for her. Junior high, high school was not good. Well, what's happening, the reason she's not getting along with the 14-year-olds is because she's never gotten along well with 14-year-olds. It was a hard time for her. So I suggested that she look back at that because maybe your 14-year-old is helping you see where the pain from the past is coming. And then the husband has his eyes wide open at this point because he realizes how much pain he had gone through when he was around 5, 6 years old, just like the age as a child. Mm-hmm. So one of our favorite lines that we use often is life will bring you people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free yet. Mm-hmm. So the biggest thing that we have taken from our kids, and now we teach our kids as they're adults, is if I'm upset with one of my kids in a way that that upsets me, I have to get clear first before I can do anything for them. Meaning, because if I'm upset, it's harder for me to hear from the Holy Spirit to say what they really need to hear. Yeah. So if I can't hear from the Holy Spirit, they're not going to be able to hear. Period. It just won't even make sense.
Right.
So the biggest thing we do immediately is we try to get to a place where we can absolutely hear them. And if we can't get to that place, we'll pause. We'll pause or tag you in. Okay, you go in there. I got nothing.
Yeah, I wish we had this understanding when we first got married.
Yeah.
But it's kind of grown over the years.
Yes.
But even now, like, talking to our young adult kids and our teenager, if we're in the conversation and one of us starts to notice that my mood has changed or my perspective, or I'm starting to feel a little bit defensive or a little bit offended, it's probably time to stop talking right now, because that means I'm going to show up not good next.
Right.
If I don't show up good, there's no way I can lead this person, because now I'm in my stuff just like they are. And so being able to just take that break and say, let's talk about this a little bit later after I've spent some time with God and got myself back together, has really been, has really given us the privilege of leading our kids through some stuff without us getting in the way.
Yeah, it's almost like the kids become the gift as well.
Yeah.
Because whatever the thing is that bothers you about what they did or said, you've always had that. Mm-hmm. Now the kids are just the ones reflecting and letting you know that it's there. You can go to God with it and then come back a better person and able to really hear what's going on for the kids. And more importantly, you're probably not that smart. Like, I'm not that smart, but the Holy Spirit can show up in those moments. Mm-hmm. And then I can seem like I'm just a doggone genius. Mm-hmm. Like, Dad, you're amazing. That doesn't happen. Never. But in my head, that's the translation. They're like, okay, Dad, whatever. But in my head, what I'm hearing is, Dad, you're amazing. I love you. You're the greatest. Can I have a picture with you? That's right.
8x10 glossy. You can sign. Well, this has been awesome. And I know there's so much more that you guys can share. There's a book out called Funny How Marriage Works. Is that right?
No. Well, is there? I've never seen that book before.
No, that's one I wrote with your stuff.
But there is a book called Funny How Life Works.
Funny How Life Works. Thank you.
If somebody wants to take the next step and find out what's really going on, you can go to the 90-minute marriage conference and get involved with that. It's probably going to take about 90 minutes.
Okay.
You guys split it up together between your husband and you. It'll probably be about 90 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
45 apiece, tag in.
Yeah.
Okay.
45 minutes in case you can't be in the same room.
That's
yeah. So anyway, we're excited about that. So just go to the Funny How, what's it called? 90minutemarriageconference.com. 90-minute, whatever. Look it up. It's in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. All right. Any website that I could direct people to if they, for some reason, can't find the 90-minute marriage?
Funnyhowmarriageworks.com.
Yeah, if they want to come see us live on stage and see the comedy show mixed with the marriage, they can check out Funny How Marriage Works. So that'll be really cool for them. And then I'm awesome. Excited, man. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being a part of this and for being willing to be on the show. It's a real gift to our listeners, and hope it's a blessing to a lot of people in marriages.
Yeah. Hey, you tell both your listeners I said thank you.
I will. I'll tell my mom and whoever she's held hostage in the room.
Cool. You got one aunt, and she's schizo. That's just the same person.
Yeah, exactly. There's multiple people depending on the day. All right, gang. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You guys are awesome, man. Thanks, Rusty.
Hey, well, thank you so much for listening today. I want to make sure that you listen to the other 5 episodes in this podcast series as we seek to make marriage simple. Share this with a friend. Pass it on to somebody else. And if you haven't, check it out on YouTube as well. You're able to watch this conversation with our guests. We'll be back next week with brand new content as we get to hear from a great couple who have a marriage ministry that are going to talk to us about the cheapest and easiest way to build a great marriage. You're not going to want to miss this. So join us next week on Simple Faith. Until then, keep it simple.